And now behind the wheel with 2 laps to go. Allgaier on the inside, Bain on the outside.
It's August 25th, 2023. There's 2 laps to go in the Wawa 250 at Daytona International Speedway, and Trevor Bain is looking to do something that he hasn't done in 8 years.
With a trophy and a trip to victory lane, Trevor Bain is the winner.
Win a NASCAR race. Austin Hill makes a move to the outside of Trevor Bain, and in a desperate attempt to keep the lead, he's about to participate in a time-honored tradition of NASCAR racing.
A clean restart. Hill runs up. He runs to the team. They catch the 2, and the 1 goes around. Carson has made grab flags. The 19 of Bain slides to the inside. Trevor Bain comes shooting halfway through it. Just one more goes home. Here we go. Busch, the dominant part of the day in the wall.
How bad of a block really was that? I was curious, so I came up with a system. You take 3 different criteria from each block, rank them out of 10, average them all out, and multiply them to get a score out of 100. The higher the score, the worse the block. Pretty simple, right? No! If I rank them all myself, it won't be objective at all. But if 5 people do it, I think that's about fine. So I enlisted the help of a few trusted colleagues to rank this block and 51 others that we could find in order to find the worst block in the history of NASCAR. At least of the 21st century. It's the era we're all the most familiar with, and it's a lot easier to miss blocks the further back in time you go. By the end of this video, I will have shown you the top 10 worst blocks in NASCAR history. Asterisk. So let's start with Trevor Bain here. Our rankings averaged out a 4.8 out of 10 on stupidity, a 6.8 in chaos, and a 7.6 in comeuppance, which comes out to a final score of 64.0 on the bad block scale. Now, it's important to define what is and is not a block before we get too far along. Here's my definition. A block is any move performed by a driver that is made with the intention of asserting their position in front of another car or preventing the other car from passing them. So, for example, this is not on the list. Elliott Sadler isn't blocking Kurt Busch, he's just reacting to Dale Earnhardt Jr. moving down a lane in front of him. This also isn't a block, it's just the worst attempt at a merge since that one guy that you saw on the highway that one time. Kevin LePage wasn't trying to keep the field behind them, he didn't even know they were there. Now that we have that out of the way, let's take a look at our graph before we get into which blocks are the worst. This is a ternary graph representing every bad block of the 21st century that we could find. If you've ever seen a graph depicting different types of sand, it's kinda like that. They were graded on 3 different criteria. Stupidity, how stupid the decision to block was, chaos, how big of a crash it caused, and comeuppance, whether the blocker got caught up in his own mess. This graph doesn't actually measure how bad a given block is, only how much of the 3 criteria is there relative to each other. So a block over here didn't result in a big crash, and a block down here probably wasn't that stupid. Since there isn't an axis for the worst block, I've colored the top 10 in and made the top 3 triangles so we can easily identify them. Let's get going with the lowest rated block on this graph. It received a 2 in stupidity and a 0 everywhere else, so it's placed here as 100% of its points are in the stupidity column. This is our control group. Tyler Reddick putting on a masterclass on the final lap of the 2019 Xfinity Series race at Talladega might have been a little stupid, but he won the race and no one got junked, so it gets a 0 pretty much across the board. His final score is 5.3 out of 100, the lowest score on this list by far. The oldest Cup Series block on this list is from 2000, a season that feels a lot more like the 90s than the 2000s, not just for cultural or political reasons, but because of the way NASCAR looked. They weren't on Fox or NBC yet, Jeff Gordon still drove the rainbow car, Dale Earnhardt was still around, I could go on. Anyway, it's a pretty standard example of what a bad block is. Scott Pruitt thinks he's clear, tries to block Robbie Gordon, and causes a huge mess in the process. It's got a 41.3 on the scale, good for 39th place, and it's this low mostly because he got away scot-free. This block falls into my favorite part of this chart. Every dot towards the left side of this triangle reflects the lowest of the comeuppance rankings. These are guys that caused a huge mess and walked away whistling. It's the wall of no consequences. Let's start off in 2018 at Daytona with one of the only unanimous zeros in the comeuppance category. This block also provides some context as to why these types of moves happen. It's William Byron's first year in the Cup Series, and he doesn't have that much experience against Cup-level competition yet. It's Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 6th season, but he only has 2 Cup wins to his name, and this is by far his best shot to make the playoffs. He's proven himself by winning 2 superspeedway races in the year prior, and he'll go on to win the Daytona 500. His style of racing can be pretty aggressive, and people have taken to calling him Wrecky Spinhouse, though it's not clear how much of that is his driving style and how much of that is this how well it rhymes with his name.
Which driver causes the most crashes? It's got to be Wrecky Spinhouse, right?
Oh, no.
Anyways, the combination of a desperate aggressive driver trying to make the playoffs and a desperate rookie looking for his first win is about to cause some trouble for the driver between them, Brad Keselowski. This isn't a video about bad pushes, but Byron did cut down in front of the 2 to stop his momentum, so it was a block. And as a block, it earns a score of 32 on the block scale, mostly because one voter insisted that it was entirely Stenhouse's fault.
Ricky was pushing, he didn't do anything wrong. It's my fault, hit a really fast Miller Lite Ford, and Dave, I'm just not wrecking enough people. I need to wreck more people so they'll stop throwing bad blocks, and that's what's happening to me on the plate track. So, everybody that's watching, all them drivers out there, throw another bad block. I'm just going to drive through you and wreck you, so look out and Talladega.
Byron would block Keselowski again, in practice this time. Brad just straight up dumps him, not taking any shit this time. He's publicly said he'll do this to anybody who tries this in the race. They show a replay of this during the race on Sunday. Just gonna hang on here for a second. There we go. There it is. This block earns itself a 42 on the block scale, as it had a lot less chaos but a lot more comeuppance. The Coke Zero 400 has been moved to late August, and it's the final race before the playoffs, so by design, most of the field is going to be running like Stenhouse did in 2018. Tyler Reddick is about to prove that true by making one of the wildest blocks in the history of auto racing.
Tyler Reddick out front. Now Tyler's going to try to block. He's in the fence. Up into the wall he goes. The 18 also in the wall. Eric Jones gets caught up in it as well.
Due to the relative lack of comeuppance, it only gets a 50.3 on the scale, but I guarantee that if he hadn't hung on to that car, this would have been in the top 10. This is the highest ranked block with a comeuppance ranking below 3, with the runner-up in this category going to AJ Allmendinger at Pocono in 2010. Pocono is the most prominent and practically only non-plate track for this sort of move, thanks to its 2 very long straightaways. There are 2 more blocks at Pocono that we found, one being Austin Dillon from 2023.
And I can see his argument, but I can also see Reddick saying, hey man, I felt like you crowded me on the entry.
The other one at Pocono makes me laugh every time I see it. It's the 2020 Pocono Organics 150 in the Nascar Gander Outdoors Truck Series. And we're in stage 1. Ty Majeski is about to throw a big block for 3rd place. At Pocono. In stage 1 of a Truck Series race.
On the pole and find yourself all the way back.
Oh, and now the 45 of Majeski after some contact and a heavy hit.
I think it's about time we get on with this top 10, so let's rapid fire off a few honorable mentions. Noah Gragson and Bubba Wallace both wrecked themselves out of the front of the field in Turn 1 at Talladega last year, and they get a 67.3 and 71.6 respectively, good for 15th and 11th. Tony Stewart takes 12th with this move at Talladega in 2006 that landed him upside down. Greg Biffle earns a 68 for this move in 2007 that I honestly have no words for. Jeff Gordon spun himself out of a chance to win another Daytona 500 in 2002, and then he did it again in July 6.5 years later. And finally, everybody and their cousin came up the track off Turn 4 in Daytona in 2008. Alright then, let's get on with the top 10. This is Rob Morgan. Rob has never won a NASCAR race, but he co-owns his own team at the age of just 26. He'll eventually go on to retire from NASCAR and sell his stake in his team to NFL superstar Randy Moss. But he hasn't done that yet. Right now, he's battling for 7th in the first ever Truck Series race at Daytona, and he's about to cut across the nose of a 21-year-old Truck Series rookie named Kurt Busch. I'm sure this will go well.
Not following the truck in front of him. Don't know what's going on there. Whoa! Oh, look out! We got trouble. This is going to hurt.
God dang it. I can be glib about this wreck now with 20-odd years of hindsight because we all know that Jeff Bodine will be okay and he'll get back to racing in less than a year's time. But in this moment, here and now, everyone thought he was dead. This is perhaps the scariest accident in NASCAR's modern era, maybe even of all time. If this doesn't deserve a 10 in the chaos ranking, literally nothing does. Thanks to that, the amount of distance Rob Morgan moved down to try to block Kurt Busch, and the fact that he got caught up in the wreck himself, this earns a 72.7 on the block scale, enough for 10th place on this list. Let's stay in Daytona, but jump up a ring on the ladder to the 2012 Drive for COPD 300. We're at the tail end of the bump drafting era, though it'll continue on for a little while longer in the lower series before being banned entirely. Kurt Busch, hey Kurt, welcome back Kurt. He's just lost his drafting partner on the final lap, and he makes the only move he can think of in order to have a shot at the win. Trying to block 3 cars at once. This goes about as well as you think it will.
Rewind in turn 4. A squeeze to the outside wall. Trouble in the corner. Hard, vicious crash. Who gets through to win the race? Caution flag has just been called. The race leader is James Busher in the 30 car.
Congratulations to James Busher on his first and only NASCAR Nationwide Series win. It was gifted to you by Kurt Busch, who earns himself a 75 on the block scale. Let's head down the Florida coast for number 8 on this list. It's November 20th, 2016 at Homestead Miami Speedway. Carl Edwards is on the front row for what could be the final restart of the Cup Series season. If he holds his position, he's going to win his first Sprint Cup championship at the age of 37. Edwards is one of those guys from the late 2000s and early 2010s that really should have a championship at this point, but he just doesn't. You know, the victims of Jimmy Johnson. Guys like Edwards, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, hell, even Mark Martin and Jeff Gordon could have gotten one in this span, but Jimmy just dominated this era. 5 straight championships from 2006 to 2010, and another one in 2013. Some of these guys have finally gotten their titles in recent years, but Edwards is still looking for his first. With an opportune win at Texas a few weeks ago, he's in the Final Four, and all he needs is one good restart.
Top than the 18 of Kyle Busch. And you can bet Kyle Busch will try to make that happen. He's unbelievably good on that outside on restarts.
10 to go. They come into the restart zone. Kyle Larson, the outside. Carl Edwards on the inside. Green flag back in the air. They're blocking. Good go down low. Carl Edwards into the wall. He got tagged by the 22. Big hits by the 19. And the caution comes back out again.
Jason told me he was looking low, and he told me basically he was there. I knew what Jason was saying, and I just pushed the issue as far as I could because I figured that was the race there. And that's how it ended.
Jimmy Johnson through 3 and 4. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
This was Carl Edwards' final NASCAR race. He abruptly retired after the season ended and didn't make an appearance at a race for 7 years, though now he claims that this race had nothing to do with his decision to walk away. And he also earned himself a 76 block rating, good for 8th place.
It's mandatory that when a driver gets out of the car in the race that they go to the infield care center. Normally, they're taken there by the ambulance, but I believe the communication between the track worker, the safety worker, and Carl was, I'll walk over there. I'm going to walk there.
The 2021 Daytona 500 was a relatively tame affair, a well-needed breather after the previous 500's catastrophic final lap. Christopher Bell gave a bad push to Eric Almirola and took out a good chunk of the field pretty early on, and I guess it just scared the rest of the field so much they wanted to ride around until the very end. One thing that tends to happen in modern plate racing is everybody waits until it's too late to make a move. Ever since Dale Earnhardt Jr. perfected the Highline train around 2014, people just assume they could wait until the last lap, even if they're in like 15th place. But with the late Gen 6 plate track package from 2019 through 2021, you kinda could. Look, they're already getting side by side. Oh, no, it's going away. Anyway, you can get huge runs with this package. Look at Brad Keselowski right now. He's about to make this pass for the win as long as Joey Logano doesn't.
Oh! Teammates! Around they go in a hard crash. Kyle Busch.
Larson.
Joey Logano's last second block gone wrong earns itself a 78 on the scale, good for 7th place. What's your favorite finish in NASCAR history? Maybe it's Kevin Harvick and Mark Martin gliding towards the finish line at the 2007 Daytona 500 as the field behind them is swallowed up by a black hole. Or maybe it's Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch's cars becoming one as they collide towards the finish line in Darlington in 2003. Maybe it's some underrated gem like the 2004 Winn-Dixie 250. There's a litany of iconic final laps in the history of NASCAR stretching from 1959 all the way to this year. Any one of these could be your favorite. And this one
The white flag
is mine.
is up. Final lap in Talladega. Who's it going to be? Labonte, Earnhardt Jr., Stewart, or maybe somebody out of the back? Look at this move by Jr. at the white flag. And Tony Stewart got Labonte blocks Bobby Hamilton. Cannot believe it. Contact. Bobby Labonte's over. It's the big wreck on the final lap. They're racing back for the win. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart are side by side. This is for the victory as Jeff Burton gets in the middle of it. At least 10 cars involved in the wreck on the backstretch. Burton and Stewart are side by side. That's all Earnhardt Jr. needs to see. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has won the $1 million bonus here in Talladega.
The inciting incident that makes this finish what it is was a bad block. Not the one Alan Bestwick calls out,
Labonte blocks Bobby Hamilton.
but the one right after that, the one that's much harder to see because it happens right before NBC switches their camera shot. Bobby Labonte comes back down to block Bobby Hamilton a second time and he just can't pull it off. 80.3, good for 6th place. Also, shout out to this flag just sitting here. Whoever was manning it couldn't give enough of a fuck to wave and just sets it down. On July 4th, 2009, I was not watching the Coke Zero 400. I was at my family's Canada Day party that we held on the first Saturday of July every year. Around 11:30 at night, I got to my grandparents' house where I was staying the night, went on NASCAR.com, and saw this. God damn it, what did I miss this time? Coming to the white flag, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin make their move on Tony Stewart. Denny doesn't have enough momentum to go with Kyle though, and he gets stuck in the outside lane, which means it's going to be a 1 versus 1 for the win. Tony spends turns 1 and 2 waiting for a run to develop and gets right to Kyle's back bumper going down the backstretch.
He's mirror driving right now. Tony Stewart trying to get to the bottom. He may get turned for mirror driving, but he's going to be mirror driving.
I mentioned earlier that the 2001 EA Sports 500 was my favorite NASCAR finish, but this is my favorite broadcast call of the finish. We're about to hear a wild cacophony of all three announcers yelling over each other like it's 3:59 at the New York Stock Exchange.
Stewart's trying to squeeze in there. He's shoving to the bottom.
He just wanted to touch him, man. Just wanted to touch him.
Can't get him to the high side. Here he comes. There he goes. Honourable Bush in the wall. Here comes Stewart to the checkered flag. And another car gets in the backside. It's Casey Kane. And they're scattering everywhere as they come to the line.
Some of these guys hit hard, man.
And one of them was Kyle Busch.
They're still hitting hard.
God, I miss NASCAR on TNT. Kyle could have let Tony Stewart stay alongside him and run clean to the finish. 3 years later at the Bud Shootout, they did just that together. I wonder if either of them were thinking about this finish then. But here and now, Kyle pulls the stupidest block we've seen so far, except for this thing, and makes the top 5 with a score of 80.6. Also, what the hell was Carl Edwards doing? He absolutely did not need to go in the grass like that. Let's rewind a few months and stick with Carl Edwards. With 3 laps to go at the Aaron's 499 at Talladega, he's running in 8th and hasn't led a lap all day. Suddenly, he's joined by Cup Series rookie Brad Keselowski, who is under contract with Hendrick Motorsports to join the 5 team for 2010 and beyond. Coming to 2 to go, they pick off Marcus Ambrose for 7th. As they pass David Reagan for 6th, the announcers take note.
Here they come. Look at the 99 and
Brad Keselowski.
And we once again, there's that 2-car draft. And
they
look at the run. They get off turn 2. That's 10 mile an hour faster than the cars in front of them.
By working as a 2-car tandem, Edwards and Keselowski are able to create a seemingly never-ending run. They weren't the first to do this, and they sure as hell won't be the last. This form of racing is going to dominate the super speedways until 2012, when rule changes will render it near impossible in the Cup Series and eventually outlawed entirely in the lower series. By the white flag, they have the lead.
Yeah, Carl Edwards from the back all day to the lead with 1 to go.
Coming into the trial for the final time, Brad knows that to win, he has to make his move now. He has to find a way around Edwards. Whatever he does will be in the shadow of Regan Smith. The last time the Cup Series raced here, Regan Smith nearly scored his first career Cup Series win by passing Tony Stewart in the trial. But because he went below the yellow line to do it, NASCAR disqualified him and awarded the win to Stewart, his final victory for Joe Gibbs before starting his own team. Incidentally, what Stewart did here is a block that's on this list, but it isn't visible on the graph because it has a comeuppance ranking of negative 0.2, the only negative ranking on this list. As he makes an identical fake to the outside and cut to the inside of Smith, Brad Keselowski knows what happened to him. Even if Carl tries to force him below the line like Stewart did, he can't budge. He has to stay in position no matter what. Carl, on the other hand, assumes the rookie won't have the guts to do it. So he earns his 4th place on this list by throwing a block that lands a score of 82.6.
Not sure where Carl's going. Maybe he thinks if he runs across the start-finish line, it'll count.
That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing.
He's like a you know how he is. He's an athlete, a marathon runner. I want to finish the race.
And he did,
yes,
to
he
a
did.
standing ovation from the crowd. Shades of Ricky Bobby.
The threat of rain can make even the smartest driver do something stupid. When you're running the late Gen 6 Super Speedway package, the threat of rain can reduce you to a babbling fool. It's July 7th, 2019 at Daytona International Speedway. The final Coke Zero 400 to be held on Independence Day weekend was scheduled for last night, but lingering storms have pushed it back to today. We took a look at this race earlier when Brad Keselowski spun William Byron in practice and Ricky Stenhouse cleared himself off of Kurt Busch. This weekend is no stranger to dumb maneuvers, but we haven't seen anything yet. The final stage has just started and the rain is getting closer than ever. Everyone in the field knows that this race could end at any moment, so every single lap is treated like it's the last. Given the fact that every single race with this package either ended under yellow or with a wreck on the last lap, that's not a very good sign. Austin Dillon takes the lead on the restart and has no intention on giving it up. With darkening skies and a full field on the edge of control, one errant move is about to spell the end of the race. As he loses the lead, regains it, and then loses and regains it again, I'm sure he's thinking in the back of his mind that it could be him that causes the end. But when he makes this move on lap 120, I'm not sure he was thinking anything at all.
Racing continues. Austin Dillon up front. They shifted him. That's going to be a big one. And now around goes the 3 in front of the pack. They're all collected. The 11 would damage the 22 as well.
Only a handful of drivers would make it through the crash, and only a sliver of them would stay out during pit stops. And of those drivers, only one would stay out with 1 to go before the restart when the lightning finally descended upon Daytona. Austin Dillon's block, scoring an 83.3, would gift Justin Haley and Spire Motorsports their only wins to date. Daniel Hemrick is an aberration. If one were shown his career top 10s from afar, you'd be forgiven for thinking that he's one of the better drivers a series could have to offer. A double-digit winner, perhaps, nothing to scoff at, especially in one of the top tiers of NASCAR. Daniel Hemrick has won once. Daniel Hemrick is a champion. And Daniel Hemrick still has everything to prove. When you have everything to prove, it doesn't matter what situation you find yourself in. If you even have a sliver of a chance to win, you must throw caution to the wind and take it at all costs. There's 3 laps to go in the Ag Pro 300 at Talladega, and Daniel Hemrick is leading a line of Chevys in the top lane. His rear gunner is Jeb Burton, former winner at this track for Colleague Racing, Daniel's current team. As is the case with most superspeedway races, the action is picked up as the laps wind down. Off of 2, Jeb cuts left, following the flow of the banking in an attempt to arrest Sheldon Creed's momentum. He's too late, and Creed has aligned his car entirely alongside Jeb in the inside lane. The 1-car buffer Daniel Hemrick had enjoyed prior to this is gone. He now faces the seething tide of primal rage contained in churning machines alone. He is most certainly prey. but he still has everything to prove. Entering turn 3, the situation evolves again. Jeb Burton exercises the agency found with no longer being aligned with his prey and walks his car up the track. Daniel shadows this move and positions his car half a lane down on his pursuer. Jeb slides down in reaction, reorienting with the peloton, and Daniel reacts again. He glides down the banking and covers himself off again. He drifts further down. In his efforts to cover off the outside, he's outrun his coverage. Sheldon Creed has the entire inside lane to himself and is closing. Daniel's heart beats from disaster, but he still has everything to prove. He's too late. There's no redoubt. Hemrick hooks himself across the nose of the two, and everything is over in seconds.
And there goes Daniel Hemrick off the bumper of Sheldon Creed. And this is the big one here at Talladega.
Final score, 91.3. Daniel Hemrick, to this day, has not won a second race. This is one of the most unbelievable racing pictures I have ever seen. A full field of cars, 4 wide, several rows deep, all going nearly 200 miles an hour. If one car steps out of line, a monumental crash is sure to follow. This picture was taken with 2 laps to go in the 2012 Good Sam 500 at Talladega. Matt Kenseth leads, though he has no help in defending from a hard-charging Tony Stewart. Stewart effortlessly flies past Kenseth to take the lead at the white flag. Kenseth hangs on behind Stewart, but the run just doesn't develop. This is Stewart's race to lose.
Will they make it back?
Well, he will pass the fast one. He's got the 49 pushing him here.
4 deep behind Stewart and Kenseth. Yeah, Kevin Harvick's got some real help coming towards the front here.
Suddenly, in the middle of the pack behind them, Michael Waltrip aligns perfectly with Casey Mears. Mears pushes enough to break away from Paul Menard behind him and somehow recaptures the magic of the 2-car tandem from previous years. A run like this could push Michael Waltrip to his first win since 2003, and if Mears can pass him in the tri-oval like so many tandem finishes have seen in the past, he could get his first since 2007. For 2 drivers with a combined 5 Cup Series wins total, this is a godsend. They've captured lightning in a bottle. In this moment, they might even describe themselves as an unstoppable force. Unfortunately, they're about to run into someone who, if he wants to win, needs to become an immovable object.
Pushed by Casey Mears. Kenseth with Harvick behind him. Oh, there's contact.
Get out of you now.
Stewart into the middle of the pack and over.
Fortune's out.
And a huge wreck to end this race. Matt Kenseth is going to get to the finish line first.
Tony Stewart didn't cut across the entire track like Daniel Hemrick would 11 years later, but the chaos factor pushed this block just past Hemrick's for the top spot, clocking in at 92.6 on the bad block scale, making this the worst block in NASCAR history.